Please come in. You're right on time. The door only opens when the clock strikes midnight. Georgia and Hannah are preparing to broadcast from the belfry. Just like this old bell tower, they have many stories to tell. Some old and some new. Follow me up these stairs, but mind your step. Ah, they're waiting for you.
Okay. Leave me alone.
All right. Do you remember when we went to Philadelphia?
Do I?
What a good time.
I can't wait to go back.
You remember when we went to the library?
Do I? Because I definitely plan to go back.
We got the chance to look at some rare books. Some
We sure
rare
did.
letters and pieces of paper
Manuscripts
and shit and such.
and cuneiform tablets
We sure did. And
and
we saw
Charles Dickens' stuffed bird.
yeah, I was just gonna say we saw the bird. The bird.
In one of his desks, and the Egyptian Book of the Dead Scrolls.
And the
Letters from Poe.
Letters from Poe. The baby, the prayer.
Oh, the Books of Hours.
Books of Hours, yeah. Well, when you're there, if you want, you should try to take a look at Dr. Benjamin Rush's published book about what I am going to talk about, published in 1794, about the 1793 yellow fever epidemic in Philadelphia.
So they have it as part of the rare book collection?
That book, I believe, yeah.
Okay.
They may or may not have the newspaper clippings from the epidemic at the time, but I'm pretty sure they do have his book that he published where he described everything that he witnessed, described very, how do I put this? What?
Graphically?
Graphically. Yeah, that's the word I was thinking of. In like a scientific medical way, but it's clear that he was also like kind of traumatized by it.
Yeah.
And he had
fair.
He had dealt with previous yellow fever epidemics before. In I believe 1762 was the last, well, it wasn't an epidemic, it was just an outbreak. Didn't last very long. Well,
so this is happening in this is happening in Philly. Meanwhile, yes. Down south.
Yeah.
We got murdering, rampaging.
Yeah.
Psychopath brothers. It's great.
That's why I was like, oh, this is going to be good.
Yay.
Yeah, because the brothers, their stuff, their nonsense started earlier than this.
Yeah.
1793. So this is sort of like a snapshot in the middle.
Yeah.
And this was a lot faster.
Yeah.
On August 5th, 1793, Dr. Benjamin Rush, one of Philadelphia's most prominent physicians and signer of the Declaration of Independence,
Daddy J,
was called to Dr. Hugh Hodges' home. Hodges' young daughter, when he got there, was jaundiced, suffering from a high fever and vomiting blood. She died that day.
We love a good classic blood cough.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
God, Walter White had that.
Jane
Sam,
Austen.
Jane Austen, Samuel Winchester.
Every lady in any period movie.
Yeah.
Um, Nicole Kidman and Moulin Rouge.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So just a few months prior to this, some 2,000 French colonial refugees departed Saint Domingue in present day Haiti
Mm-hmm.
for Philadelphia. They were fleeing the revolution led by the land's enslaved peoples that actually led them to retain sovereign rights over the place, and it was then named Haiti.
Hell yeah.
Um, at the same time, a British merchant ship called the Hanky, like hanky panky, hilariously.
I hope it had a
Um,
sister ship named the Panky.
I hope so. They made port in Philadelphia after departing the West African colony of Bolama, which is present day Guinea Bissau. It was really common in late summer, early fall for people to get sick with fevers in this area, anywhere like on the coast.
Gross.
In the South, planters and other wealthy folk usually left the Low Country during late summer, early fall. Um, Native peoples thought that newcomers, the people who moved over from Europe or wherever,
Mhm.
Canada, had to undergo what they called a period of seasoning, quotations, and were more likely to die of seasonal fevers. That's why it's called seasoning.
Yeah. I mean, like, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. In 1793, Philadelphia was the temporary capital of the United States. So the federal government operated out of there. And at this time, the government was due to return in the fall after a break over the summer. They kind of got the chance to, but we'll get there. The first two people to die of yellow fever in this specific instance were both immigrants, one from Ireland and one from Haiti. It was only later that their sudden fever and other debilitating symptoms were attributed to the yellow fever epidemic. After a couple of weeks and Dr. Rush's visit to his friend's daughter, he he kind of said, "Yeah, I need to immediately tell somebody in charge. I need to tell the governor
Mm.
that the yellow fever had returned and it's worse this time." So
Yay.
he immediately began alerting the medical community and obviously the governor, reporting that the city faced an epidemic of highly contagious as well as mortal bilious remitting yellow fever. I hate that word. Bilious. Ugh.
What what is it about Philly that attracts all the pandemics?
I don't know. I mean, it's dense. It's really dense.
Yeah. But because like this was obviously a bad case of yellow fever, and it was also in Philly that there was the whole thing with the Spanish flu, and then they
Mm-hmm.
had the parade because they thought it was over, and then a bunch more people died because it wasn't over.
Well, it's an international port city, even now.
Yeah, that's true.
Um,
Yeah, because the stuff for my grandma, like that's coming in
mhm.
through Philly. All
Yeah,
of our, yeah. Yeah, I guess it makes sense.
yeah.
Kindred
I think
roots.
because it's on more of like a mainland than say New York City, which is also a port city,
Yeah. But
but
if you're transporting it even further, it makes sense to just ship it straight to Philly
yeah,
before unloading it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Many early deaths were of teenagers and heads of families in the dockside areas. The city, fearing, immigration was the cause, imposed a quarantine on the people and all goods from Haiti. But funnily enough, once enough people started dying, it was kind of difficult to enforce the quarantine. But I digress. So it was, at the time, the largest city in the US with around 50,000 residents.
Okay.
Like now, it was relatively compact, dense. Most houses were within 7 blocks of the major port on the Delaware. Which
Still
is kind
smaller
of,
than Cahokia.
yeah, it's kind of wacky that it was, that small, because we've been there and it's like, holy crap, this place
Yeah.
is huge.
Yeah, and for that to be the biggest city at the time is crazy.
I know, at 50,000 people, funny.
Yeah.
Docking facilities extended from Southwark, which was south of the city, like the neighborhood south of the city, to Kensington to the north.
hmm
So it's just like the whole ass coastline
Yeah.
on the river. Cases of fever clustered first around the Arch Street Wharf, which I believe was closer to the south in Southwark. Rush, the doctor, blamed some damaged coffee which putrefied on the wharf near Arch Street for causing the fevers. Yeah.
Okay.
Soon cases then started appearing north in Kensington. The governor at the time asked the port physician, Dr. James Hutchinson, to assess health conditions in and around the port, so like dock workers and nearby residents.
Yeah.
And he found that 67 of about 400 residents near the Arch Street Wharf were sick, but only 12 had, quote, malignant fevers, end quote.
I'm making faces, but it's important to recognize that germ theory wasn't even a thing at this time, so they're really doing their
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. Oh, girl.
And like Jon Snow and the cholera stuff, and that hadn't happened yet, I don't think.
Yeah.
And like,
I was just about to
yeah.
get into what Rush described for his remedies. Oh, you're going to be so excited.
Yay.
So he described some of his early cases in this book that he wrote. Well, I'm going to be honest, it's like a compilation of his notes that's just more coherent. On August 7th, he treated a young man for headaches, fever, and vomiting, and on the 15th, treated that man's brother. On the same day, a woman he was treating turned yellow while he was there. On the 18th, a man on the 3rd day of fever had no pulse, was cold, clammy, and yellow, but he could sit up in his bed. He died a few hours later.
Oh, he had no
On the
pulse.
It was probably so weak he couldn't
Yeah,
feel it.
couldn't feel it. That's gross.
On the 19th, a woman Rush visited died within hours. Another physician said 5 persons within sight of her door died. None of those victims was a recent immigrant.
Weird.
So he formed a committee through the College of Physicians, which then immediately published a letter in all Philadelphia newspapers suggesting 11 measures to prevent the progress of the fever for it to get worse. They warned citizens to avoid fatigue, the hot sun, night air, too much liquor, and anything else that might lower their resistance. Vinegar and camphor
Yeah.
camphor in infected rooms, I've only ever read it, to be honest, cannot be used too frequently upon handkerchiefs or in smelling bottles by persons whose duty calls to visit or attend the sick.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, they outlined measures for city officials, stopping the tolling of church bells and making burials private, cleaning streets and wharves, exploding gunpowder in the street to increase the amount of oxygen.
Oh no.
Everyone should avoid unnecessary contact with the sick. Crews were sent to clean the wharves, streets, and the market. And that sort of helped increase morale because it just like looked cleaner. Mostly, though, thousands of people just left the city. They were just like, I'm not doing this. So,
Same.
like all hospitals of that time, the Pennsylvania hospital didn't admit patients with infectious diseases. So they had to set up a temporary hospital. The Guardians of the Poor, which was a charity
I
organization,
was gonna say,
took
I hope
over
that's a charity.
took over Bush Hill, a 150-acre estate just outside of the city, whose owner, William Hamilton, was in England for an extended stay. Vice President John Adams had recently rented the main house. So yellow fever patients were placed in the outbuildings. It was like open. It was people were working there, staff were working there, so folks could go in.
Uh, Throwback to Daddy J throwing shade at John Adams.
Oh yeah, it's not a well liked dude. Uh,
Yeah.
Between the college's advisory on August 25th and the death of a Dr. Hutchinson from yellow fever on September 7th, panic spread throughout the city. More and more people fled. Um, Between August 1st and September 7th, 456 people died of yellow fever. 42 deaths were reported on September 8th. An estimated 20,000 people left the city through September, including national leaders like George Washington.
Mm-hmm.
He and his wife and his children left for his estate at Mount Vernon.
When, sorry, when did the first two people die?
That was August 5th.
Okay, so it's been like a month.
Wait, no, JK. No, it was August 1st. But Dr. Benjamin Rush visited his friend's daughter on August 5th. So it was
Okay.
4 days after that first death. But like I said, those first two deaths weren't attributed
Yeah.
until like late September.
I
And it
was
was like,
just
oh,
curious about the spread.
yeah, it was
The
very
yeah.
fast. Like
Yeah.
beginning of August to September 7th, 456 people died. And the next day alone, that day, 42 people died.
That kind of makes me
Um,
curious about. So it was a month?
mhm.
Philadelphia.
the worst the worst death toll within like a week was 711 deaths in mid-October. Crazy.
I mean, I'm curious to know how that compares to like COVID numbers, but it's hard to just compare right off the top, like with a quick Google, because you'd have to do math about like per capita and all
Mm-hmm.
that, since
I mean, you
population is
could
so
look up
different. And
like just Philadelphia, maybe.
yeah, but you also would have to account for like the difference in population size. That's what I mean.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
So anyway,
Publisher Matthew Carey released a short pamphlet later in the fall in which he described the changes that had occurred in the life of the city. He said, those who ventured abroad had handkerchiefs or sponges impregnated with vinegar or of camphor at their noses, or smelling bottles full of the thieves' vinegar. I don't know what that is.
thieves
Others
vinegar. I'm gonna look it
others
up.
carried pieces of tarred rope in their hands or pockets, or camphor bags tied round their necks. People hastily shifted their course at the sight of a hearse coming towards them. Many never walked on the footpath, but went into the middle of the streets to avoid being infected in passing by houses wherein people had died.
Oh,
Acquaintances and friends avoided each other on the streets and only signified their regard by a cold nod. The old custom of shaking hands fell in such general disuse that many shrunk back with affright at even the offer of a hand. A person with a mourning crepe on any appearance of mourning was shunned like a viper. What did you find out about thieves' vinegar?
I think thieves is like I don't really know why it's called that, but it's vinegar which was distilled from wine, cider, or like,
Oh,
like clear liquor. And then it was infused with herbs, spices, and or garlic. And it's basically like what they did during the plague as well.
yeah,
Like same, yeah, same like remedy or
yeah.
whatever.
Herbal remedy. Wives' tale.
Yeah, because there was that whole thing that they believed. I mean, considering they didn't know anything about germ theory and they were like, it's something about like the air being contagious. Like,
Oh yeah.
I mean, obviously smelling fucking potpourri isn't gonna do anything to prevent you from inhaling contagion, but they were on the right track considering they didn't know about germ theory.
Yeah.
So props to them for trying.
The College of Physicians Advisory, that one they put up before, talking about uh what the hell did they say? Don't have too much liquor
Yeah.
type thing. They implied that the fever was contagious. People should avoid contacts with its victims, although duty to humanity kind of required that those people be cared for anyway. So somebody had to do it.
Yeah. I
Um,
like that they said avoid the hot sun, but also avoid the night air. Just don't go
mhm.
outside.
Don't go outside, which was a terrible decision. Dr. Rush knew of a Dr. John Lining's observation during the 1742 yellow fever epidemic in Charleston, South Carolina, that African enslaved peoples appeared to be affected at rates lower than white people. So this guy, Lining, assumed they had a natural immunity. Writing a short letter to the newspapers under the pseudonym Anthony Benezet,
Fake name.
a Quaker who had provided schooling for Black citizens, free people, by the
Uh-huh.
way, in Philadelphia. Um, he suggested that the city's people of color had immunity and solicited them to offer services to attend the sick to help those known in distress. Huh. Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, members of the
Absalom.
yeah, Absalom. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah,
Or
I
is it
think
just a
so.
funny
I just
name?
forgot that name existed and that it was a
Oh
funny
yeah.
name. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, they wrote in a letter in a memoir published shortly after this epidemic. Early in September, a solicitation appeared in the public papers to the people of color to come forward and assist the distressed, perishing, and neglected sick, with a kind of assurance that people of our color were not liable to take the infection, upon which we and a few others met and consulted how to act on so truly alarming and melancholy occasion. After some conversation, we found a freedom to go forth, confiding in him, capital H, they're talking about God, who can preserve in the midst of a burning fiery furnace, sensible that it was our duty to do all the good we could to our suffering fellow mortals. We set out to see where we could be useful. The first we visited was a man in Emsley's Alley who was dying, and his wife lay dead at the time in the house. There were none to assist but two poor helpless children. We administered what relief we could and applied to the overseers of the poor to have the woman buried. We visited upwards of 20 families that day. They were scenes of woe indeed. Yeah, no shit. The Lord was plentiful to
Whoa.
strengthen us and removed all fear from us.
So I am assuming that these are black men who were like, okay, we'll do it in response
Yes.
to this like letter.
They
Okay.
were like, this is terrible. We have to help.
Okay. I mean, good for them. I probably would have been like, what the fuck have you done for me lately?
Real. Um, Allen noted in his account that because of the increase in mortality, he and Jones had to hire 5 men to assist them in removing corpses,
Oof.
as most folks avoided the dead people lying in the streets or in their
Yeah.
houses.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
I get it. Yeah,
I guess that makes sense.
I don't blame him. In a letter to his wife, Dr. Rush said that the African brethren, this is in the quote, furnish nurses to most of my patients.
Furnish nurses. Ooh.
Furnish. Despite Rush's theory that the air was nasty, Rush's theory that the air was nasty and thus the black citizens were immune, they were not immune to the fever.
Yeah. Who could have seen that coming?
Yeah. Many of the enslaved peoples in Charleston in 1742 could have gained immunity before having been transported from Africa because they were directly transported. I can't
Right.
talk. By having been exposed to yellow fever in a more mild case.
Mm-hmm.
People who survived one attack did gain immunity, it seemed like. A total of 240 Black citizens died in Philadelphia in proportion to their population at the same rate as white people. Given the limited resources and knowledge of the times, the city's response was, what's a good word? Fine. It was credible.
That's fine.
Yeah. Well, the medical community didn't know the natural history of yellow fever.
Mm-hmm. Are you gonna get into that? About like
What's
what
actually caused it? The mosquito?
well, just about like what yellow fever is.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. That's all. I just I think it's important to note that it is really similar to malaria, but malaria is a
Yeah.
parasite, whereas yellow fever is
It's viral. It's a virus infection.
I think it's a virus, yeah.
Yeah. Um.
So it's harder to treat.
Oh yeah. A viral infection spread by the Aedes aegypti mosquito.
Yeah.
Efforts to clean the city did not defeat the spread of the fever, as the mosquitoes breed in clean water as well as in dirty water. We know this. They will freaking breed in like a puddle.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Like,
I hate mosquitoes. God.
Philadelphia's newspapers continued to publish during the epidemic, and the doctors and others tried to understand and combat the epidemic, and they communicated through the newspapers. On September 7th, Dr. Adam Kuhn, who had studied medicine at the University of Uppsala in Sweden, bougie,
Oh.
he advised patients to treat symptoms as they arose. Dr. Rush claimed that he had tried Kuhn's stimulating remedy, but that his patients still died. He recommended other treatments, including purging and bloodletting, and published his theories after the fact in this book that I have mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
The hope offered by any of these treatments was soon dashed when it became clear that they did not cure the disease.
Wait,
and the doctors.
Sorry, this is the book that Rush was reading from the earlier epidemic.
This is the book that he wrote.
This is the book from
and,
his notes. Okay.
Published in 1794. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The hope offered by any of these treatments was soon dashed when it became clear they did not cure the disease, and the doctors' competing claims demoralized patients. Basically, it just made them sad. There's a lot of information in these like letters and writings. It's like demoralized, defeated, blah blah blah. Like the people just felt like shit, and like nothing good was ever gonna happen, kind of thing.
We kind of know how that feels. Looking at you, 2020.
Yeah. Oh my God. Excuse me. The state legislature cut short its September session after a dead body was found on the steps of the state house.
Oh, good.
The governor became ill and was advised by his doctor to leave. The city's banks remained open, but the bank operations were so slowed by people's inability to pay off loans because of the epidemic that they automatically renewed loans or like banknotes. Yeah, this
sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay. The mayor, Matthew Clarkson, was the one who organized the city's direct response to the epidemic. Most of the common council members fled. I mentioned there were around 20,000 people in total fled the city. People who did not leave Philly before the second week in September could leave the city only with great difficulty, facing roadblocks, patrols, inspections, quarantines, blah, blah, blah. The mayor's committee inspected the Bush Hill Fever Hospital, and they found that the nurses were unqualified, arrangements were really chaotic, there were a lot of people sick and dying who worked there. And he said, the sick, the dying, and the dead were indiscriminately mingled together. The ordure and other evacuations of the sick were allowed to remain in the most offensive state imaginable. It was, in fact, a great human slaughterhouse.
Ooh.
Chills. Weird chills. As the death toll in the city rose, officials in neighboring communities and major port cities, such as New York and Baltimore, established quarantines for refugees and for goods coming from Philly. New York established a committee appointed to prevent the spreading and introduction of infectious diseases in the city. Which, that's interesting, because now I think the Center for Infectious Diseases is headquartered in New York City still.
Yeah.
So I guess they were the first kind of committee.
Yeah. I was gonna go off on a tangent about the NBEF, the biological, like the thing that they have in New York with that houses like samples of all the different infectious.
Yeah. And it's
But
got the plague there.
Yeah, but they're moving that to Manhattan, Kansas.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, it's slightly
Because
the middle of nowhere.
it's less populated if something went wrong. Yeah.
It's because they're sister cities. The Big
Yeah.
Apple and the Little Apple.
Yeah, one of my regulars, when I worked at the coffee shop there, one of my regulars, he worked for Homeland Security and like, but he was there specifically to like work on getting the facility established.
Yeah.
It's
I
gotta be
wonder if,
done.
it's gotta be. It's probably gotta give the university, a track for hire, right? Like, I
Yeah,
don't know, how's
because
the medical program at...
it's not so much the medical program, but they have a really good vet med program, which,
Okay.
kind of, I mean, what are you experimenting on, So,
Yeah. Well, maybe,
but
I don't know, maybe something will get
yeah,
set up, because that's like a
they
really great job opportunity.
the K-State vet med is prominent enough that when there was the Ebola, was it in the chimps? Do you remember that
I think
happening? Like,
Ebola in 2012?
yeah,
Or,
and
yeah.
there were like infected chimps, and it was
Yeah.
like K-State vet med people that were like dealing with that,
Oh,
if I remember correctly. And
fascinating.
because I was in my microbiology class in 2012, and so we talked about Ebola a lot, obviously, because it was like topical. And I remember my teacher talking about that. Anyway,
How fast? Oh.
I
Ugh.
I love microbiology, I love epidemiology, and I love medical history. Here
There's
we
no
are.
but. You just you just like it.
Yes, it's fascinating.
I thought there was gonna be a but unfortunately, you're an archaeologist, so
But unfortunately, yeah. But my childhood dream was to be an archaeologist, so here I am. Although I was thinking, I think I said this to Seth the other day. I was like, you know how people are just medical historians? I think I want to be an archaeology historian.
oh my God, that's so funny. I thought you were gonna say you wanted to be a medical anthropologist. Um,
No, absolutely not.
yeah, like
One of my
bioarchaeology.
That would be fine if it was like from an archaeology lens, but just from like an anthro lens. Like one of my friends from my class did focus on medical anthropology, but he studied a lot of it through like a climate change lens and like,
Yeah, that's really popular right now.
yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway.
sorry. So this committee in New York City set up citizen patrols to monitor entry into the city,
Hmm.
and stagecoaches from Philadelphia were not allowed in.
Hmm.
Doctors, preachers, and laymen all looked to the fall, the cooling down of fall time to
uh-huh.
end the epidemic.
The
At first, they hoped a seasonal equinoctial gale or hurricane, equinoctial gale, would blow away the fever. Instead, heavy rains in late September seemed to correlate with a higher rate of cases. I wonder why. Residents next anticipated freezing temperatures at night, which they knew were associated with ending the usual fall fevers. What, buddy? Hi.
my chair, mother, form it.
By the first 2 weeks of October, which was the peak of the crisis, I mentioned before the 771 deaths in one week.
Yeah.
Gloom pervaded the city, as one newspaper
Gloom.
wrote.
Oh.
Most churches had stopped holding services, and the post office moved out of the area of the highest number of cases. Come on. The market days continued, and bakers continued to make and distribute bread. Several members of the mayor's committee died. African American nurses had begun dying of the fever. Carts took ill victims to Bush Hill and the dead to burial grounds. Doctors also
Bring
became ill
out
and
your
died.
dead.
Bring out your dead. Doctors also became ill and died, and fewer were available to care for patients. 3 of Dr. Rush's apprentices and his sister died.
Aw.
He was too sick to leave his house. Such
Goddamn.
news cast doubts on Rush's methods, but none of those victims had submitted to his harsh treatment.
He's just a little guy. He's trying his best.
So those refugees from Haiti who thought they had immunity used the streets freely. Few other residents did. Those who had not escaped the city tried to wait out the epidemic in their homes. And then when the mayor's committee took a quick census of the dead, they found that the majority of victims were poor people who died in homes located in the alleys behind the main streets where most of the business of the city was conducted.
Shocker.
On October 16th, temperatures finally cooled. A newspaper reported that the malignant fever has very considerably abated. Stores began to reopen on October 25th. Many families returned, and the wharves were once more enlivened as a London-based ship arrived with goods. Excited that, commerce has begun again.
Yeah.
Capitalism.
Yeah. I remember what that was like, too, when we all thought that it was over.
And we went to Philadelphia.
And we went to Philly.
Oh my God.
And everyone was like, never mind, we have Omicron.
Yeah.
The Omicron variant.
God, that was so long ago.
God. 2 years ago.
The mayor's committee advised people outside the city to wait another week or 10 days before returning. 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
January 2022, yeah. Fuck me, man. Sorry, Mom.
In the belief that the epidemic was related to bad air, the committee published directions for cleaning houses, which had been closed up, recommending that they be aired for several days with all windows and doors open. Quote, burning of nitre will correct the corrupt air which they may contain. Quick lime should be thrown into the privies and the chambers whitewashed. On the 31st of October, Halloween, a white flag was hoisted over Bush Hill, which read, no more sick persons here. But after some warm days, fever cases recurred, and the white flag had to come down. And then on November 13th, stagecoaches resumed service to the north and south. A merchant reported that the streets were in an uproar and rendered the wharves impossible by reason of the vast quantities of wine, sugar, rum, coffee, and cotton. That makes sense. Wagons and stagecoaches, ships and stuff were finally allowed to bring shit in and take shit out. So there's going to be a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The mayor's committee recommended purifying houses, clothing, and bedding. Dr. Kuhn, who I'd mentioned before, advised at the time to drink wine, at first weaker wines, such as claret and Rhenish. If these cannot be had, Lisbon or Madeira diluted with rich lemonade.
Okay.
Yeah. The quantity is to be determined by the effects it produces and by the state of debility which prevails, guarding against its occasioning or increasing the heat, restlessness, or delirium. I left that part in because I was like, sometimes these doctors just write for the sake of reading their own words. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
what are you
Like
saying?
anthropologists. Yeah.
Yeah. He placed the greatest dependence for the cure to the disease on throwing cool water twice a day over the naked body.
Okay.
The patient is to be placed in a large empty tub and 2 buckets full of water of the temperature 75 or 80 degrees Fahrenheit's thermometer, according to the state of the atmosphere, are to be thrown on them. Dr. Edward Stevens also advocated for this treatment as he claimed it had cured Alexander Hamilton, who
Oh,
had contracted yellow fever at the time.
okay.
Um, After further experimentation, Dr. Rush decided that a powder of 10 grams of calomel and 10 grains of the cathartic drug gelap. Calomel is mercury, by the way.
Okay.
It would create the desired elimination of the disease that he was seeking.
Niter is potassium. I looked that up.
Oh, okay. Since the demand for Rush's services was so great, he had his assistants make as many of his powders into pill form as they could. He urged that the patient stay in bed and drink plentifully of barley or chicken water. Ew.
What?
Then after the bowels are thoroughly cleaned, it was proper to take 8 to 10 ounces of blood from the arm if, after purging, the pulse was full or tense. To keep the body open, he recommended more calomel or small doses of cream of tartar or other salts. If the pulse was weak or low, he recommended chamomile or snake root as a stimulant, and blisters or blankets soaked in hot vinegar wrapped around the lower limbs. To restore the patient, he recommended gruel, sago, panada, tapioca, tea, coffee, weak chocolate, wine whey, chicken broth, and white meats according to the weak or active state of the system. The fruits of the season may be eaten with advantage at all times. The sick room should be kept cool, and vinegar should be sprinkled around on the floor.
Okay, well, I was gonna ask if chicken water is just chicken broth, but if they also said chicken broth, then I assume not.
I assume, yeah, yes, maybe. Because those are 2 different paragraphs that I have here. One is
Like from
no,
two
they
different
are
people.
no, they're 2 different. The one that was more descriptive is from his book that he
Okay.
published,
Yeah.
and the other one, I believe somebody said. I think because all of the doctors were like talking to one another,
Yeah.
publishing in newspapers to like communicate with one another because they didn't want to, be with one another because of the
Yeah.
sickness. Um,
Um, also
yeah,
wine whey.
I
Wine
know.
whey.
Wine way.
Ew.
Disgusting.
Ew.
Disgusting.
I get it though,
Like
'cause
thinking about
like
it makes me gag.
yeah, I mean even today like vinegar is used as a natural cleaner. So I kind of like I understand the logic behind like sprinkling on a floor, but still
Yeah.
wine whey. Blech.
Wine way.
And like wine is not that different from vinegar. So like again, I get the logic behind it, but it's still disgusting.
In the aftermath, the governor ordered the city to be kept clean and the port policed to prevent infected ships, like those from the Caribbean, from docking until they had gone through a period of quarantine. The city then suffered additional yellow fever outbreaks in 1797, in 1798, and 1799, which kept the origin and treatment controversies going.
Hmm.
No one really knew exactly where it came from. Ugh. Some of the city's clergy suggested that the epidemic was a judgment from God. Led by the Quakers, the religious community petitioned to the state legislature to prohibit theatrical presentations in the state. Theatrical presentations, as in like um, surgical theater.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
American doctors did not identify the vector of yellow fever until the late 19th century. In 1881, Carlos Finley, a Cuban doctor, argued that mosquito bites cause fever. He credited Rush's published account of the 1793 epidemic for giving him the idea. Rush had written, and I read it, mosquitoes, the usual attendants of a sickly autumn, were uncommonly numerous this year. And that's it.
Uncommonly numerous. That's all he wrote for this guy to be like, aha! What a smarty pants.
I know. So yeah.
Yep.
Have
It
we learned
sucks.
anything? I don't know.
I mean, based on how COVID is going, no.
Yeah, for real.
Like, honestly. The sun is like, I have all my lanyards like hanging there from conferences and stuff, and the sun is just reflecting off the fucking plastic into my eye.
It's
Um, anyway, um, yeah. It's crazy to talk about, like, yeah, it's just crazy to talk about epidemics and like the plague and all that in a post-COVID reality, like, because it used to be, oh, I can't even imagine something like that happening now. And then it happens, and we're just like,
yeah,
the f what is happening? What do we do? We're supposed to be too advanced for this, but like,
yeah.
we're not.
We're really not.
We're not.
We're just a
People can't wash their damn
squishy
hands.
bunch of squishy apes is what we are.
Yeah, like life is so fragile
It sure is.
and mostly
YOLO.
pointless.
It's not pointless. It's really
Ugh,
not. The point is to feel.
I hate feeling.
I know.
That's why
But
I think life is pointless.
you do it anyway, girl.
Ugh.
You do it anyway.
Well, I'm gonna complain. Fine, but I'm gonna complain about it.
Uh, you sure are, brother. Just kidding. Oh, goodness me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Man, good for them. I love germ theory.
Yeah.
I love germ. Okay, so when I go to Philly in May, I do want to go back to the library.
Hell yeah.
Um,
You
so
should see if you can check that out. Because you can like make an appointment, right?
you can make an appointment. And when we were there without an appointment, there was like, is there anything in particular you want to see? And we
Yeah.
were like, no,
Now
just
we
whatever's
know.
cool.
Yeah. I think we were so sleep deprived and cold.
Yeah, well, and I was really the only person that had looked into it, right? And I was like, I just know this is a thing we can do, so let's go do it. It wasn't like, let's look at the website and see like what collections they have. It was just like let's go.
Yeah.
Um, and I like that we did that. I like because they just gave us a really awesome general tour of everything, and it kind of worked out because it really kind of hit on like a lot of our overarching interests anyway, like the
Mm-hmm.
illuminated manuscripts and like the cuneiform and the Book of the Dead and the Books of Hours and like the Poe stuff and the Dickens stuff. Like it all kind of like fit in with our interests anyway. But um, yeah, having some time to like scroll through
Their
uh,
library.
their their website and just like see what collections they have and like what other stuff they have. I mean, shit, man, we even need to do that for the library here.
The National Library of Medicine currently has a digital copy.
The other slightly related thing is that I'm gonna go to the Mutter Museum
Oh, hell yeah.
since
Now
it
that
was
it's open.
closed the entire the for the 1 week and 1 week only that we were there, it was closed, but I guess they always close the first week of the year. I think a lot of places do, and it's weird that the SHAs are generally in that time period because everyone is still recovering from the holidays, but whatever. Yeah, but I am gonna go to the Mutter Museum. And I'll have to read my book before I go.
Oh.
That's a book I can add to our digital podcast library shelf. Dr. Mutter's Marvels. It's about uh, him establishing the collection at the museum. That is now the museum.
Hold on, I can download his book as a PDF RQ. Because at the end of the book, he recounts his experience. Dr. Rush, he recounts his experience with yellow fever, like what he was feeling and seeing and all that.
Like, I'm tired of seeing people cough up blood.
I'm tired of seeing myself cough up blood, more like.
Yeah, probably.
And I just read it like through like a flip book kind of thing online. But I'll download the PDF and it's taking a long time, so I'll just talk to you about it later.
Find some good screenshots from it.
Oh yeah.
To share.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah. I gotta pee again.
Okay, I gotta get more water.
Me too. Okay, happy February. Bye.
Happy February.
Well, that concludes this week's broadcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you wish to stay in touch, reach out to us at broadcastfromthebelfry@gmail.com or stalk us on Instagram at broadcastfromthebelfry. Again, I hope you've enjoyed our little show. Please rate and review. And until next week, stay